At noon, the sky became extremely dark. The darkness lasted for 3 hours, and at 3 o'clock, Jesus groaned out from the depths, crying, my God, why have you abandoned me?" Some bystanders heard him, and said, "Listen, he's calling for Elijah." Someone ran off, soaked a sponge in sour wine, and put it on a stick, and gave it to him, saying, "Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down." But Jesus, with a loud cry, gave his final breath. At that moment, the temple curtain ripped right down the middle. When the Roman captain standing guard in front of him saw this, he said, "This has to be the Son of God." Hello, my name is Toby. I'm part of the Alive and Free team. Welcome to this bonus Good Friday episode of Alive and Free. The tearing of the temple curtain or veil is probably one of my favourite parts of the Bible. It's an act so filled with symbolism and deeper meaning that I think it just appeals to my imagination. So if you don't know, the veil is a huge curtain that hangs in the temple. Think sort of 3 or 4 stories high and the full width of your church. Its purpose was to separate the rest of the temple from the Holies of Holies. The Holy of Holies is the innermost sanctuary of the temple, the place where God's presence was found on earth. Only once a year, on the Day of Atonement, the high priest would be allowed to pass through the veil into the direct presence of God to perform some rituals. This was the most holy place on earth, and a fun fact is that it was so holy that it was a legitimate concern that the high priest would just drop dead on entering. So they used to tie a rope around his waist so they could pull him out, because otherwise they'd have had to wait a whole year until the next high priest could go in. The veil tearing is mentioned in Matthew, Mark and Luke, each stating that the veil was completely split down the middle into 2 parts. And this is significant because God's presence was no longer veiled from the rest of the world, no longer confined to the Holy of Holies. There was no longer a need for the Day of Atonement because atonement had been achieved through Jesus' sacrifice. And what really struck me this year is that separation. This year we're all separated from our friends and our family, and I know we're all missing them and each other. Unfortunately, we can still communicate with each other. Video chat is a big thing now. There are phones, emails, could even write a letter. But I'm sure you would agree it's just not the same as being with them. Not the same as spending time together. Not the same as sharing a meal. And in some ways this can give us an understanding of God's separation from a sinful world. He could still communicate with them through the Old Testament. You see him speaking directly and through prophets. We know he still answered prayers. And when the veil was torn, it was the end of this separation. So he could be reunited with his children, and he could share a meal with them. And I think that's why a big part of our faith is centered around communion. So I do wonder what happened when the priests saw that the veil had split. I'm sure it caused quite some panic. But I wonder what happened when they found out it coincided with Jesus' death, whether they put 2 and 2 together. In the book of John we do hear about Nicodemus, a priest who had spoken to Jesus some time earlier, but still seemed sceptical when he left. But now he accompanies Simon to bury Jesus in the tomb, providing the expensive oils needed to embalm him. Now I don't know if this is a result of seeing the veil split, or whether that was just the final piece of evidence he needed. But other than that, we don't really have an idea of how the priests took it. So this Good Friday, we can think about separation, and we can know that even God's separation from a sinful world can be ended, and that our separation will be ended too. And when we do, we can share meals together once again. Thanks for listening. God bless.